She stood at the front of the classroom, her voice trembling with defiance, as the teacher's hand gripped her braids tighter, pulling until her knees buckled, and she crumpled to the floor in front of her stunned classmates. The room fell silent, but the echoes of that moment would ripple far beyond the walls of Lincoln High School, igniting a firestorm of outrage and demands for justice. From wherever you're watching, whether it's Chicago, London, New York, or beyond, share this story. Let the world know what happened to Aaliyah Thompson in that classroom. Use Fed Justice for Aaliyah to join the conversation and demand accountability. Aaliyah Thompson, a 16-year-old junior at Lincoln High School in a mid-sized American city, was known for her bright smile and sharp wit. She was a straight-A student, a member of the debate team, and someone who never shied away from speaking her mind. Her braided hairstyle, meticulously done by her mother every few weeks, was a point of pride, a connection to her heritage and a symbol of her identity. But on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday morning in October 2025, that pride would be turned into pain in a way no one could have predicted. The teacher, Ms. Karen Reynolds, was a 15-year veteran of the school system. Known for her strict demeanor, she often clashed with students who challenged her authority. Aaliyah, with her quick tongue and unapologetic confidence, had been on Ms. Reynolds' radar before. Their interactions were tense but never physical, until that day. The classroom, filled with 25 juniors, was a typical mix of teenagers, some engaged, some distracted, all expecting another routine history lesson. No one anticipated the chaos that would unfold. It started with a small disagreement. Aaliyah had raised her hand during a discussion about the civil rights movement, pointing out what she saw as an oversimplification in Ms. Reynolds' lecture. "You're making it sound like everything was solved in the 60s, Aaliyah said, her tone firm but respectful. "Systemic issues are still here. We're living them." Her classmates nodded, some whispering in agreement. Ms. Reynolds' face tightened. "This isn't a debate class, Aaliyah," she snapped. "You'll listen when I'm speaking." But Aaliyah wasn't one to back down. "I'm just saying the truth," she replied, her voice steady. The room grew tense as Ms. Reynolds stepped closer to Aaliyah's desk, her eyes narrowing. "Stand up," Ms. Reynolds ordered. Aaliyah hesitated but complied, rising from her seat. The teacher's voice grew louder. "You think you can disrespect me in my classroom?" Aaliyah shook her head, her braids swaying slightly. "I'm not disrespecting you, I'm just speaking." What happened next stunned everyone. Ms. Reynolds reached out, grabbed a handful of Aaliyah's braids, and yanked, hard. Aaliyah gasped, her hands instinctively reaching for her head. "You need to learn your place," Ms. Reynolds hissed, pulling again. The classroom erupted in gasps and shouts. "Stop!" one student yelled, while others froze, their phones already out, recording. Aaliyah tried to pull away, but Ms. Reynolds' grip tightened. "Let go!" Aaliyah cried, her voice breaking. The teacher's face was red with anger, her words venomous. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" Another yank, and Aaliyah stumbled, her legs giving out. She collapsed to the floor, her hands clutching her scalp, tears streaming down her face. The room was a cacophony of screams and cries of, "What are you doing?" from her classmates. The incident didn't end there. As Aaliyah lay on the floor, sobbing and clutching her head, Miss Reynolds stood over her, unmoved. "Get up," she demanded, as if nothing had happened. But Aaliyah couldn't move, not out of defiance, but because the pain was overwhelming. Her scalp burned, and she felt dizzy, her vision blurring. Two students, Malik and Sarah, rushed to her side, helping her sit up. "She needs help!" Sarah shouted, glaring at Miss Reynolds. The teacher, realizing the gravity of the situation, stepped back, her expression shifting from anger to something resembling panic. She was being disruptive. Ms. Reynolds stammered, as if justifying her actions to the room. But the students weren't having it. Malik, his voice shaking with rage, yelled, "You assaulted her! You can't do that!" The video, now circulating among the students' phones, captured every moment. The pull, the collapse, the teacher's cold indifference. Within minutes, the school's principal, Mr. Jenkins, was called to the classroom. He found Aaliyah still on the floor, surrounded by her classmates, some crying, others shouting. Miss Reynolds stood in the corner, her arms crossed, insisting she had done nothing wrong. She was disrespectful, she repeated, but her voice lacked conviction. Mr. Jenkins, a seasoned administrator, knew this was beyond a simple classroom dispute. He escorted Aaliyah to the nurse's office and called her mother, Tanya Thompson. Tanya arrived at the school within 20 minutes, her face a mask of fury and fear. "What happened to my daughter?" she demanded, her voice echoing through the hallway. The nurse explained that Aaliyah had a bruised scalp and was shaken but physically stable. Tanya, however, wasn't satisfied. "Who did this to her?" she asked, her eyes locking onto Mr. Jenkins. When he hesitated, she pushed past him, heading straight for the classroom where Ms. Reynolds still stood. The confrontation was explosive. "You put your hands on my child?" Tanya shouted, her voice carrying the weight of a mother's protective rage. Ms. Reynolds tried to defend herself. "She was out of line, and I was trying to discipline her." Tanya's eyes widened. "Discipline? You call pulling her hair until she collapses discipline?" The argument drew a crowd. Teachers, students, even parents who had been called to the school. Tanya's words cut through the air like a blade. "You don't get to touch my daughter. You don't get to humiliate her because she spoke her mind." But now, the video had spread beyond the school. Students had sent it to their parents, who shared it on social media. The hashtag #FactJusticeForAleah began trending on X within hours. Local news outlets picked up the story, and by evening, the incident was being discussed on national platforms. Commentators weighed in, some defending Ms. Reynolds' right to discipline, while others condemned her actions as abuse, pointing to the racial undertones of targeting a black student's hair. A cultural symbol often misunderstood or stigmatized. The school district issued a statement promising a full investigation, but it did little to quell the growing outrage. Community activists organized a protest outside Lincoln High the next day, with dozens of people holding signs reading, "Protect Black Students," and "Fire Karen Reynolds." Aaliyah's family, meanwhile, hired a lawyer, determined to seek justice not just for Aaliyah, but for every student who had ever felt targeted or unsafe in a classroom. Aaliyah herself was struggling. She refused to return to school, haunted by the memory of her classmates' faces as she fell. "I just wanted to say what I thought," she told her mother, her voice barely above a whisper. Why did she have to do that? Tanya held her daughter close, promising that no one would hurt her again. But the pain wasn't just physical. It was the humiliation, the violation of her dignity, that lingered. Ms. Reynolds was placed on administrative leave, but the community was divided. Some argued she was a dedicated teacher pushed to her limit by a disrespectful student. Others saw her actions as emblematic of deeper issues, racial bias, unchecked authority, and a system that too often failed Black students. The debate grew heated, with school board meetings turning into shouting matches. Parents demanded accountability, while teachers' unions cautioned against rushing to judgment. As the investigation unfolded, more stories emerged. Former students came forward, sharing their own experiences with Ms. Reynolds' harsh methods. One girl, now in college, recounted how Ms. Reynolds had once mocked her natural hair, calling it unprofessional. A boy said she'd singled him out for minor infractions, making him feel like he could never do anything right. The pattern was clear. Ms. Reynolds had a history of targeting students of color, particularly Black girls. The school district faced mounting pressure. The superintendent, Dr. Elaine Carter, held a press conference promising transparency but offering no specifics. "We take these allegations seriously," she said, her voice measured. But for Aaliyah's family and supporters, it wasn't enough. They wanted Ms. Reynolds fired, criminal charges filed, and systemic changes to ensure no student would face such treatment again. The twist came 2 weeks later, when a second video surfaced. It wasn't from the classroom, but from a faculty meeting a year earlier, secretly recorded by a teacher who had since left the school. In it, Ms. Reynolds could be heard complaining about certain students who think they can get away with anything because of their race. The clip was damning, confirming what many had suspected. Her actions weren't a heat of the moment lapse, but part of a pattern of prejudice. The video reignited the firestorm. Fire Justice for Aaliyah trended again, this time globally. Protests spread to other cities, with activists calling for broader reforms in how schools handle discipline and bias. Ms. Reynolds was officially terminated, and the district announced new training programs on cultural sensitivity and de-escalation. But for Aaliyah, the victory was bittersweet. She transferred to another school, where she was slowly rebuilding her confidence. But the scars, both physical and emotional, remained. Tanya, now a vocal advocate, spoke at a community rally. "This isn't just about my daughter," she said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. "This is about every child who's been made to feel less than because of who they are. We won't stop until every classroom is safe." The story of Aaliyah Thompson became a rallying cry, a reminder that the fight for justice is far from over. From wherever you're watching, Chicago, London, New York, or beyond, join the movement. Share Aaliyah's story. Demand accountability. Use Phagistosforalia to amplify her voice and ensure no student ever faces such cruelty again.